One of the things in psychology and biology that we often think about is the big picture. And one of those big picture things is self-enhancement, which is an organism, in this case a human, thinking that their abilities or their thinking is better than it actually is. So often it masks itself in the way of me thinking I'm smarter than I am, I'm funnier than I am, I'm a better driver than I am, I'm a better lover, I'm a better scientist, whatever it may be. That's known as self-enhancement. So self-enhancement is thinking, believing, acting as if you're better than you actually are. Is it a good thing for me to see myself as I really am, or is there a benefit for thinking that maybe I'm better than I am? And the answer is reality is not necessarily a good thing. People with clinical depression, severe depression, have a lack of self-enhancement. So they actually see themselves as they truly are, whereas people who don't have clinical depression tend to self-enhance. That's been interpreted as self-enhancement is an antidepressant. It helps sort of fend off depression. And if you sit down and think about it, that actually makes sense, right? If you sort of inflate who you are as a person, thinking that you're more interesting than perhaps you really are, right, you would be less likely to be depressed. Females tend to self-efface about their weight or their general appearance. They think they look a lot worse than they really do. Males, on the other hand, go the other way. They'll put on a shirt where they look horrible and they say, I look great, right? And you can tell them, yeah, you don't look so great. They won't believe it. They'll discount it, right? If you show up at a job interview and you're confident and you might embellish the truth a little bit, people look at that favorably. If you walk into a dating situation and you enhance yourself, that's probably a good thing. Has it been this way through all of time? Probably not. Has it been this way? Will it be this way in the future? No. Perhaps a more humble person will be selected for, but in today's Western society, a self-enhancer certainly has benefits. If you put pride in that in that lens, immediately it becomes a critical lens that oh, he thinks he's better than he really is. That's morally wrong. That shows a lack of humility, a lack of a humble appreciation. But then I think about, well, what if Einstein didn't have pride, or Edison, right? What if some great people like Rosa Parks didn't have pride, right? Where would we be without these sort of things? I hope not to offend when I say this, but I think religion got it wrong when it labeled pride as one of the 7 deadly sins. Based on all the research that I've seen and that we've done in our lab and certainly in other labs, the sin would be not having pride, because that would be much more deadly. If we were in a world where people weren't confident, erring on the side of overconfident, I think we would see more depression. I think we would see people less happy. I think we would see people being less productive and less likely to take chances. I don't think we would be as much fun, as much interesting, or even as spiritual as human beings as we are with pride. So I think pride is a good thing. And listen, who am I to say that, religions have got it wrong? But I think in this case, they might be off a little bit. I remember this priest and I went back and forth about the moral obligation of telling a lie versus the moral obligation of telling the truth, right? If part of the goal of living a spiritual life is to make life better for other people, then yeah, you might want to be telling, deception quite often. The average person tells about 1 lie per day, and about 1 out of every 3 social encounters that we have involves some sort of manipulation of the truth. We certainly know that humans lie and deceive more than any other animal on this earth. And we certainly know that a big part of being a social species at some level involves some type of deception. And again, it's usually for the benefit of the other person. If I tell you that you look nice today, it might not totally be true, but it certainly helps our conversation go along a little bit better. If I want to be a very good liar, I have to know what you're thinking. And in cognitive science, we call that theory of mind. I have to know that you have thoughts. So if I want to tell a really, really effective lie, I have to get into your mind and say, you'll believe this. This will make sense to you. If I say it and I say it convincingly, I'll come off as telling the truth, right? Kids start lying very early on in life, that at the age of 2, right, children start to deceive. What happens with the deception as they get older, age 5, 6, 7? They lie more and they lie better and they get better at it, and it becomes more and more elaborate, right? So off the bat, kids are deceiving. We see this in all cultures, right? So wherever you go on this earth, you're going to see kids that lie, and you're going to see societies with a whole lot of deception. So there's good evidence that there's a genetic basis to deception. And again, it might not be a deception gene, but it's a brain made by genes that really, really is ready, set to deceive. This area right basically where the hairline is known as the medial prefrontal cortex. And this is an area that's sort of socially monitored. So it says, what do these people like to hear? What do these people like to hear? Oh, what about these people over here? And it's sort of figuring out the social rules. Should I make a joke right now, or should I be serious? Should I speak up, or should I be silent? And it's sort of socially monitoring what's going on. And it's this area right here that's really responsible for, is this a good time to make myself better than I really am? Is this a good time to sort of inflate who I am or exaggerate a certain characteristic about myself? So neurologically, it's pretty simple. When this area gets damaged or removed or scientifically altered, right, that's when we actually see the self-deception start to change, enhance, or disappear. So one of the things we're able to do in the last 10, 15 years is scientifically manipulate brain areas. So we can speed up particular areas of the brain, we can slow them down, or we can completely shut them off. When we shut off or slow down the medial prefrontal cortex, what happens is people self-enhance less. They're more honest with themselves, they're more honest with other people. They just deal more with reality than they did with the area working. And what we've actually just found out, this is data hot off the press, is that when they no longer self-enhance, they actually feel worse. So without this brain area, they feel worse and they're more in reality. So it's one of the signs that perhaps being in reality is not good for your mood. There are times when it's probably not a very good thing to be overly self-enhancing. For example, if I'm an airline pilot and I look out and there's ice on the wings and I say, well, I can fly this baby anyway, right? I don't need to call in a de-icer. Who wants to be late anyway? I can do it. That's probably a case of excessive pride not being very, at least, good for everyone on that plane. So certainly there are cases where pride is bad. Certainly there's cases where self-enhancing is bad. But I think as a general rule, it's probably a healthy, evolutionarily beneficial thing that humans do. If I could live a life without pride or a life with pride, I would certainly take a life with pride. Now, again, that's not to say there aren't some bad side effects of pride and some areas where we'll wind up not seeing ourselves or occluding the truth or hurting other people. Certainly that's true, but if I was looking at the scales, I would take pride over not having pride.